I'm very happy to have organized that seminar with my colleagues, Marian Harkin, ALDEADLE, Diana Wallace, all us four ladies who are quite involved in that question from different perspectives in our political campaigns in the years that are behind us in Parliament. So it's a topic which is very close to our heart and to our belief to make Europe more democratic and closer to the citizens. So that's why we wanted to do this seminar with a very large participation of organizations which are active in that field to really have a good exchange of view on the various questions of implementation. Allow me to continue in German, my mother tongue. We have interpretation facilities here because I would just like to highlight a few points.
So once again, welcome to all those who speak German and understand me welcoming you a few minutes ago. I think on such a sunny morning, the theme of the European Citizens' Initiative is be given a good context. It's important also that we introduce some elements of direct democracy to Europe. I think that really is the best way to ensure that the gap between citizens and Europe can be closed. And we've already started to think about what we mean by direct democracy, or indeed in what format democracy can be given more legitimacy. Confucius had something to say about this several hundred years ago. If you explain something to me, I'll forget it. If you show me, I'll remember. But get me involved, and I'll understand. And I think that really is a motto for a European Citizens' Initiative that could be very useful. Because getting people involved, getting people to participate, really helps people to understand the processes and to helps them understand that their opinion counts. Jean-Jacques Rousseau went even further when he said, "Any law that is not decided upon by the people themselves is no law at all." So you understand there the importance of direct democracy. We're not going to say that we're going to do away with every law that hasn't been introduced by direct democracy, but it is important to get the citizens involved. And to get them involved indeed at the outset of such processes. Already 20 test initiatives have been started up, and those who took part in that test are indeed with us this morning and will take part in our discussion. And in Germany, we've been rather reluctant to get involved with direct democracy. But there are examples of initiatives. For example, in some of the federal Länder of Germany, well, we don't all have the possibility in every land, but that does exist at a more local level and is often a success. There are various names for that actually in different parts of Germany. It's called a citizens' initiative in some places, called a people's initiative, etc. So there are different names for something that was actually the same process. And it is often the case that if an initiative is successful, then there is a resolution taken by the Parliament. And the decision as to whether that is actually taken up is a decision for Parliament itself. And in North Rhine-Westphalia, the largest land, we had where initiative had a direct influence. There was a reform of the Land Parliament, i.e. and also how those members of the regional parliament were paid, what their expenses were, etc. And I think that is actually a very topical subject. Now I greet our speaker, Maros Šefčovič, Vice President of the Commission. I'll introduce him in greater length in a moment, but I'm trying to stick to our schedule and to explain to Mr. Šefčovič that we started slightly late. So, in North Rhine-Westphalia, we've actually had some successful examples. In January 2005, there was a citizens' initiative, which was actually set up by the Federation of German Taxpayers. And we got 75,000 signatures within a few months, which were passed over to the regional parliament. And then on the 17th of March, the reform of MPs' pay and expenses was decided on, which is a very good example of the influence that a successful initiative can have. In Switzerland, as you know, there's a long tradition of citizens' initiative. That is indeed part of the constitution there. Since this possibility has been introduced in 1991, 17 initiatives have been taken up. This means that this doesn't mean, as some critics say, that there will be tens or dozens of these every year. They aren't always successful. And there are many examples of other countries where there have been positive experience with these initiatives. And at the European level, it's important for us to understand that if we're going to have a European Citizens' Initiative, then it has to be given a format that it can be done sensibly at the European level. But those are questions which I'm sure we'll be going into later on this morning. Now you have the agenda in front of you. We have the Commissioner with us here this morning, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for him. And I'd also like to welcome my colleague ADLE who is the Shadow Rapporteur on this subject for the AFCO Committee, that is the Constitutional Affairs Committee. And then we will have 3 round tables with representatives of NGOs, and we'll be looking at 3 subjects. The question of number of signatures and number of member states that will be required to validate an initiative, and how we are going to collect, verify and authenticate signatures. And then we'll also be looking at, perhaps the Commissioner can say a few words about this, the question of how the Commission is going to examine the initiatives, those which have enough signatures, etc. How is the Commission going to process these? And what possibilities these kind of initiatives actually have to be successful? And what happens if the Commission rejects them? Is there any chance for appeal after that? Then we'll hear from Diana Wallis. We'll have questions after that, and my Irish colleague Marian Harkin will talk about the experience from Ireland. I think it's a good idea actually to have some practical examples from the member states. And I'm sure we'll have some proposals then at the end of the seminar. And I'm sure we'll be glad to hear that at the end of a long morning there will be sandwiches available. And hopefully that will give us enough stimulation for the rest of the day, and indeed for the rest of the week, so that we can support this idea of European Citizens Initiative. So it's now high time for introduce our first speaker, Commissioner Šefčovič. We're very pleased to have him with us here this morning. Thank you for taking the time to come to speak to us this morning, to discuss this topic with us. You are Vice President of the Commission. It's the first time you have been a member of the Commission. You really came through the hearings there with flying colours, and we have great expectations of you. And I hope you will also pass this seminar with flying colours as well. You've lived almost everywhere around the world, it seems. In Russia, in Slovakia, obviously, in France, in the USA, Zimbabwe, in Austria, in Israel. So I think you really have a global overview of this topic for us. And perhaps you can also talk about some of the sensitivities indeed in the Council, because you've represented Slovakia in the Council for many years. So perhaps you could build a bridge for us between the various institutions. So we're very pleased to hear what you have to say.